Hello and welcome everybody to today's edition of Breaking News Business here at Mexico News Network. I'm your host Elliot Bullman. Remember to follow us on all our social networks and to catch us every day by logging onto our website mexiconewsnetwork.com for relevant stories and news. Let's start with today's show. During the first quarter of 2016, over 17 million tourists visited Mexico, marking consecutive quarterly growth for the tourism sector. Historical income figures combined with international currency expenditure in Mexico generated during the first quarter confirm that tourism is maintaining a sustained growth pattern, which is also driving the central economy, confirmed by Tourism Secretary Enrique de la Madrid. During the first 6 months of 2016, 17 million international tourists visited a Mexican tourism spot, 8.6% more than the same period last year, with revenues in excess of $10 billion, according to data received from the Bank of Mexico. During his recent working tour of Ensenada, Baja California, Enrique de la Madrid presented the initiative Let's All Travel to Mexico to local business people, inviting them to work together next month in low season to promote attractive travel packages for domestic travelers. Consequently, up to 656 companies have come on board, offering 984 different packages, which represents savings of up to 40%. And it's not just international travel that's made a positive impact. Domestic travel reported record numbers too. From January to June 2016, hotels registered 220,583 room occupancies per day, 3.7% more than during the same period in 2015, with an occupancy rate of an average 60.7%. Tourism has achieved 11 quarters of consecutive growth. Of those, 5 have been above the registered national level, which converts into one of the principal drivers of the economy and generates jobs, he added. De la Madrid stated that from between January to May, 865,000 tourists visited Ensenada, Mexicali, Playas de Rosarito, Tecate and Tijuana, which represented a growth of 10.9% compared to the same period in 2015, of which 582,000 were domestic and 284,000 were international. In other headlines, Donald Trump's presidential campaign was dealt yet another blow this week as a new opinion survey conducted amongst US economists revealed that they voted by a margin of 4-1 in favor of Hillary Clinton managing the US economy versus her rival Donald Trump. And even more significantly, business economists expressed more confidence in Liberal candidate Gary Johnson as their second choice rather than on Trump, according to details released from a new survey conducted by the National Association for Business Economics. The survey was conducted amongst 414 economists representing American business in industries including construction, retail, manufacturing and finance. The survey took place during last month's Democratic and Republican parties' national conventions. The majority, 55%, chose Democrat candidate Hillary Clinton, followed by Liberal candidate Gary Johnson, 15%, and then Republican candidate Donald Trump with only 14%, announced NABE Chairman LaVaughn Henry. The results are yet another example of how Trump is struggling to connect to the business community, despite his constant self-proclamation as a business titan. Declarations from Trump to restrict trade and his stance on immigration are exactly the opposite viewpoint of what the majority of economists believe is right for the US economy. In the survey, immigration and its impact in commerce is a very important theme for business economists. 80% of respondents in the NABE's survey said that the US needs to encourage immigration, particularly targeting highly skilled workers. Clinton's plan is to significantly increase the immigration of highly skilled workers through her visa program, H-1B. She also wants to create a pathway towards citizenship for illegal immigrants living in the United States. 65% of business economists surveyed stated that the next president needs to be more open about free trade, which again flies in the face of what Trump has said during his election campaign. Trump has been emphatic in saying that the United States is a loser in terms of commerce and that the country needs to fight back against China, Mexico, and others who he believes pose a threat to America's prosperity. The high trade tariffs that Trump is proposing, however, upon Chinese and Mexican imports have caused great concern, as this could give rise to a trade war and backfire by making goods prohibitively expensive for Americans. Once upon a time, Trump had a considerable advantage over Clinton on the question of who would be the best leader to take charge of the US economy. Since the National Party conventions that took place last month, that advantage has evaporated. A potentially brighter note for the beleaguered candidate this week came when Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto said on Tuesday that he would be willing to meet with Donald Trump months after comparing the Republican presidential candidate to Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini. "Yes, I would meet with him," Peña Nieto said, referring to Trump in a pre-taped television interview broadcast. "I've never met him. I can't agree with some of the things he said, but I will be absolutely respectful and will seek to work with whoever becomes the President of the United States." Trump has sparked outrage in Mexico with his campaign to build a wall along the southern US border to keep out illegal immigrants and drugs, and to make Mexico pay for it. Moving on, is Mexico's soda tax still working? Nothing kills a sweet tooth like a soda tax. Mexico enacted its roughly 10% tax on sugary beverages back in January 2015. You'll no doubt remember the shocking billboard campaign in Mexico City that showed the 12 teaspoons of sugar contained in a 600 milliliter bottle of Coca-Cola, as well as a man who had lost parts of his feet to diabetes. An initial study led by the National Institute of Public Health of Mexico, published in 2015, showed that a year after the soda tax was implemented, purchases of sugary drinks in Mexico fell by 12%. Even better, the biggest reductions occurred amongst the poor, who are least able to afford health care. Sugary drinks are among the primary drivers of obesity, and Mexico's obesity rate is the second highest in the developed world, trailing only the United States. But increasingly, obesity has become a global epidemic, and it's catching governments flat-footed. The initial results of the Mexico soda tax were encouraging. Raising the price of alcohol and tobacco through so-called sin taxes, which nearly all governments do, also proved to be an effective way to discourage their use. More study of Mexico's soda tax is still needed, and sales of soda have since rebounded, and nutritionalists as well as economists say it's difficult to determine causality between higher prices and consumption. But the initial evidence has led other governments to adopt similar taxes. Berkeley, California became the first US municipality to adopt a tax on sugary drinks in 2014. Programs like Mexico's and Berkeley's can have a lighthouse effect, drawing attention to soda's role in chronic health problems. One thing is for sure, a soda tax alone is not going to solve the entire obesity and diabetes epidemic. Franco Sassi, a senior health economist at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development in Paris, summarizes this point well. Taxes can be part of a public health strategy, and Mexico is a great example for other countries, but they cannot be viewed as a magic bullet in the fight against obesity. He adds that more research is needed to understand how taxes can play a role, and that complementary policies like health education are also needed for a comprehensive anti-obesity initiative. And finally, turning to the markets, the Mexican peso decreased by 0.25% to 18.43 from 18.48 in the previous trading session. The peso changed up 1.43% during the last week, was down 1.83% during the last month, and was up 8.32% during the last year. Mexico's IPC index increased 0.14% to 47,733 on Wednesday, August the 24th, from 47,666 in the previous trading session. Mexico's IPC index changed down 1.45% during the last week, was up 1.72% during the last month, and was up 12.78% during the last year. This was all for today. Thank you for staying with us. I'm your host, Elliot Bullman, and remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Log on to MexicoNewsNetwork.com for more information on Mexico and the world. Until next time.